Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. But today, I'm not talking with one, but two authors. New York Times bestselling Marie Benedict and children's literature author Courtney Sheinmel. Marie is the author of many loved adult novels, including The First Ladies, Carnegie's Maid, The Only Woman in the Room, and my personal favorite, The Personal Librarian. Courtney has written nearly 30 books for children, books for younger kids like The Kindness Club and Agnes and Clarabelle, and for older kids and teens too, like My So-Called Family and The Survival List. They have teamed up to co-write The Secrets of Lovelace Academy, the book we're talking about today. This middle grade novel is about Lainey, an almost teenager who's lived most of her life at the Sycamore Home for Orphaned Children, until a chance encounter at an open house changes her life forever. Listeners, this book is so good. I cannot wait to talk about it. So we are going to get right to the episode. Marie and Courtney, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so thrilled you're here today.
Thanks so much
Thank
for
you so
having us.
much.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, I've had an author and an illustrator on at the same time, but this is my first episode with co-authors. So you're helping me do a first in the KidLit Love world.
Oh, thank you.
So why don't we start with good old-fashioned introductions? The two of you have, this wonderful collaboration together, but separately, a beautiful backlist of books that I want listeners to hear about. So Marie, why don't we start with you? Give us the scoop on you and your writing and your journey to children's literature.
Oh my gosh, how long do you have? I mean, really? So I have been fortunate enough to be a recovering lawyer, much like Courtney, which I'm sure she'll mention, one of our many bonds. And I'm sort of a mission-driven writer. I write historical fiction that aims to kind of excavate the most important and interesting women from the past, from the shadows of history where they've been hidden or purposely buried in some cases, and to shine the light on their lives and legacies so we can really understand the breadth of their contributions and the way in which we can really learn from their experiences. I've written, as you mentioned, a lot of books. I've been fortunate enough to do that. Anything from The Other Einstein, which is my first in these, which we'll talk about quite a bit today, to Carnegie's Maid, The Only Woman in the Room, Lady Clementine, Mystery of Mrs. Christie, Her Hidden Genius, The Mitford Affair, The Queens of Crime, Personal Librarian, First Ladies, and more to come. I feel so fortunate to get to do this for my work, and I really feel very honor bound to give these women a second chance at having their histories and their stories told, because so many of them have just been unjustly forgotten along with their legacy. So that's me, and this has been such a gift, this collaboration. And I just hand it over to Courtney.
So like Marie said, I am also a recovering attorney. I always wanted to be a writer, and saying that you want to be a writer and then actually deciding to be a writer are two very different things. especially it feels very frightening to think like I have all these ideas in my head and I would love to write them down for an audience, but also the fear of like, will the audience be there? So I went to law school, which I think is an excellent thing to do if you want to be a lawyer, but a very expensive, time consuming, and probably not so rewarding thing to do when what you really want to do is write books for kids and teens. So after practicing for um, for all of my 20s, I wrote my first book, and it was published when I was 31. So that was My So-Called Family, and I really haven't looked back. I've been, as similar to Marie, just very, very lucky to get to do this with my life. I have been saying I've written nearly 30 books for kids and teens, but actually I did the math recently, and this will be my 32nd book. So I'm now officially over the 30
Over
mark
it.
of books that I've written for kids and teens. And this was, but it's my first historical fiction. It is, it is actually the first book that I've written since I had my son. So, so it feels like a return to a number of things, and I'm absolutely thrilled, similarly, to be here and to be working with Marie, which has we were basically set up by our mutual agent.
I was going to ask, how
And
did
it was
what
like the
connection
first
happen?
date ever. Like it was just one of those things where like, oh my goodness, like we have so much in common. We could, and even when we don't have things in common, we can talk about them and be open with each other and really just be myself. Let's get married. But our version of getting married is like, let's write a book together.
It really has been a wonderful joy. It really has.
So
And
tell
it was totally a blind date.
Yeah, totally a blind date.
see, and in my mind, I was thinking, okay, were they, friends at one point? How did this happen? And it was, the best version of a blind date, it sounds like. Wow. So how did that work? Before we actually talk about the book, I'd love to talk about the process of writing it, sharing that you kind of have to be in each other's minds, I would think, to have the story go back and forth. So tell us about how that worked before we get into the book.
Well, what happened was I had read Marie's book, The Other Einstein, and we had the same agent. And I had mentioned to our agent Laura, who's also our friend, and I think she sort of had that in her pocket, just knowing that I was a fan. And I don't know, did she call you first, Marie, to
I don't know. I mean, I think like you said it, I don't know, Stephanie, this might be like our first airing of this
yeah.
That's
Oh,
fun.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Talk about first. I think we have to ask Laura exactly like the timeline, but I think like she and I had kind of been talking about it because I do get asked a lot by readers, adult readers, adult women with children or grandmothers, or aunts and men too, not just women, if I'd ever adapt some of my books for younger audiences. And Laura and I had talked about that, and it just hadn't, if you're familiar with my work, I'm writing about adult women, which I now know, guess what? Middle schoolers don't want to read about a 35-year-old woman. That doesn't lend itself. And so I think, Laura had that in her pocket, and then she loves Courtney, and she's like, I wonder if a spark might fly here if I bring these two together. I don't know. We have to ask her. Do you know? Do you have any insights, Courtney?
We'll have to ask her because I didn't read The Other Einstein and call Laura and say like, wow, I love this book. I want to like, wouldn't it be great if I wrote the middle grade version? Like that wasn't in my head. I just was calling her as a fan and I knew she knew you. So I think there was some matchmaking and maybe, everyone in this business agents differently, and I think Laura is one of those who is a little bit collaborative in her approach of, if she has a good idea for one of her clients that she trusts, or in this case two of her clients, she can orchestrate a few things. But yes, this is the first time we've actually publicly talked about our origin story.
Yeah, that's true.
I
It's
love
like
it.
a Marvel movie here.
Yeah, you've got matchmaking and a little bit of magic gone in there, and that's what we hear. Well, after I read it and I learned more about the connection to the other Einstein, I thought, okay, could you imagine how much fun adult readers and younger readers could have if we started book clubs where the adult reader was reading the other Einstein and the middle grade reader was reading this Lovelace book, and they came together to talk about it in their respective books. I thought, oh my gosh, my head just started spinning of what a fun multi-generation book club idea you two could kick off with that pairing.
Yes. Could we get that going?
I say
Love
you
it.
should.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, it's interesting, and this is we haven't even talked about the book itself yet, and I don't want to jump ahead, but what's so fun about the Secrets of Lovelace Academy is, I mean, on many levels, is that it's its own story, and we can talk about how we got there, and it's a great lesson in fits and starts, wouldn't you say, Courtney? I
It
mean,
was a huge lesson in fits and
yeah,
starts. And I think we got to a place at one point, because we had a lot of false starts, where we said, okay, we are not committed to any specific idea. We are committed to figuring this out.
right.
And that
Yes.
it was also, I think, when we became, because we didn't know each other very well, when we
Right.
became friends, when we
That's
realized
right.
like we made a decision that we were going to be able to figure this out together, and we
Right.
did, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like we got a phone call from our agent. She said I had this idea, and then the next day we
Right.
wrote the perfect first chapter.
Oh, wouldn't that
There
have
you
been
have it. Like that. Although that is
great?
always, the ambition for what we do next.
Exactly. And I'm more hopeful for that. Yeah, I mean, it's, like it was a process, like you asked, what's the process? And like Courtney said, it was organic, but it wasn't a straight line by any means. And one of the things I love about it is that, well, first of all, I learned so much from Courtney, but it's a book, it's a story with characters and a structure and a setting that is entirely its own universe, and yet embedded within it is this historical story of this very real woman. And in that way, I feel like it's a very fresh take. It's not an adaptation per se, like you think of. Like, sometimes you'll see an adult novel and there's a children's version. Like I can't think of one offhand, but there's several, and I've read several of them with my sons over the years. This is different. And it's very fresh in that way. And so much of that is Courtney and her imaginative brilliance and her beautiful insights into this space and these readers, which aren't my natural readers, right? Those aren't my normal people. So yeah, it's been amazing. I've learned so much.
And vice versa. I mean, what I love about this book in particular as a collaboration is I look at it and think I never could have written this without this partnership. This is not a book that would have been born from me. It was born from this marriage. And it, like it's one of the more special experiences, because I don't see, oh, this was mine and this was Marie's. I see this is ours together. Like it's absolutely a combination of the two of us. Also, uh, Marie is an encyclopedia of historical information. She
Random, mostly.
remembers everything. And what she doesn't remember, she is the most crackerjack researcher that you've ever met in your life. So it really made like the parts that I find incredibly intimidating, in some ways, prohibitive, um, absolutely a breeze, because I would just text say like, I have no idea what happens in 1905, like on this in this situation. And about 30 seconds later, I would get this like thesis of like all like that was genius.
Oh,
There's her hidden genius. And and it
random
really
historical facts. I mean, I will say I do know way too much about um where people go to the bathroom in 1905, where an orphan child might find themselves on the streets of Zurich if they have nowhere to sleep. I mean, I do know a lot of random stuff. And what was so fun is like Courtney would ask me a question. I'd be like, I know that. Now, it never worked its way into the book, into, say, The Other Einstein. But when you're writing historical fiction, you're doing so much research to understand the setting, the time, to make it a believable and authentic universe for your characters to inhabit. And then sometimes a lot of that information doesn't have anywhere to go when you're done. But I have a new outlet now. I think Courtney has probably gotten sometimes a lot more than she bargained for in terms of historical data. So thank goodness for your
That's
patience.
100% accurate. That is totally true. I know more than I ever thought I was biting off. Like, for example, there's a moment in the book, early in the book, it's not giving anything away, when Lainey, our main character, is an orphan and she is living in the Sycamore Home for orphaned children, which is called Shock for short. And in the first chapter, they're going for a walk around the neighborhood, and these kids are they are downtrodden. They don't shower. They don't have access to all the things that we hopefully get to take for granted, and that our children get to take for granted, and most of our readers get to take for granted. And I was talking to Marie about the experience of being that kind of person in that kind of situation, and what it would be like to walk on the street, seeing everyone who's so much more privileged, and their privileges, like they can wash their face. And Marie said, oh, in those days, women of a certain class would carry bouquets of flowers or sachets with them, because if they encountered something that they thought was offensive to their sense of smell, they would lift the flowers to their noses and get to block out that riffraff and that pain that wouldn't have to become part of their orbit. They got to stay in their high class privileged lives. And that was a shocking idea to me, and also like made it into the first chapter of the book. The idea that these kids would walk down the street and have to see women lifting flowers to their noses, knowing they're the reason why these women want to block these kids out.
That was a powerful part for
I
me.
never would have come up with that by myself. That is totally, I was writing the first chapter, is when we went back and forth, like it just so happened that I was just taking the first crack, and Marie was like, well, here's something that would have happened. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is horrible. Let's put that in.
Exactly. I mean, I will say that, I've had a lot of practice at that, and sifting through like reams of historical facts. Sometimes a little something will spark a scene in your mind, or a detail will envision something that's crucial to the character. And it was so fun to work on that with Courtney, to collaborate on those and see the way that they would play out in this different scenario, right? With kids who are in this unfortunate circumstance, and how that might be, not just a little time travel portal for the reader to see, right? For them to see, oh wow, that's their reality, but also almost like an emblem for the characters and the readers to take with them, as you don't look at a little bouquet quite the same way again after you realize what it's being used for.
Yeah, that really was a powerful part in the book for me too. I actually stopped and went, wait, what, really? That is what that was. And then you, as you were saying, you get that bigger context of what that actually means and how it might make other characters feel. That there were a couple of those powerful moments for me. But as you're talking about that research process and those tidbits, those nuggets that didn't make it in to your adult books, as a former educator of little people, I now teach teachers, but when I would work with young children, it was those facts, those little nuggets, like where do people from long ago go to the bathroom, right?
Right.
That hooks them. They are in the book, they are with you, and they become readers because then they share. And so there are so many of those little things that I could just imagine my younger readers really latching onto and being curious about and wondering, and then taking that forward. And the best thing is when they tell someone else, right? Tell their friends about the book, and then it starts to spread. And
Yes.
it's like that do that. They really do.
Well, and Courtney is so brilliant because we'd be talking about a scene and as a writer of, usually from an adult perspective, she's so, her vision of looking at that same scene through a younger character's eyes suddenly shifted the scene for me. I wouldn't have been able to envision it quite that way to to really focus on what they would be looking at, what they would be experiencing, and then kind of use that as the lens through which I'd look at the historical record that I know and pull out those little pieces that might resonate with that group. A very different piece than might resonate with an adult reader or an adult character. So, I mean, that was just, again, such a gift for me. It was a way to look at these similar time periods that I've written about in a very, very different way.
Let's dive into the book. Let's give readers a little taste of what it is. So, The Secrets of Lovelace Academy. Who wants to give the quick summary, the quick elevator pitch of what listeners, readers could expect if they don't know this book yet? No spoilers, of course, as Courtney already avoided.
You want to go, Courtney?
Sure. So it is about a young orphan named Lainey Phillips, who has, as you can imagine, not had the greatest of childhood. She lost her parents when she was very, very young, and she has lived for years in the Sycamore House for Orphaned Children, where she has tried to maintain some positivity in her life, in a life that is filled with bad luck. She is also, she finds herself lucky in that when she was very, very young, there were certain things that her parents taught her. So she is a smart, smart girl, and she's able to read, which is unique to someone in her circumstances. And she reads all the books that are available that have been donated, whether they are appropriate for kids or not, in her school. And one of them is an old science textbook. And through the knowledge that she gains through what she is reading, she ends up getting a scholarship to an elite school for girls who are gifted in math and science, and it changes her life. And she goes on an amazing journey that is not easy. Um, and just when she thinks that her luck has changed for the good, it is not as straightforward as she hoped it would be when that opportunity was given to her.
Man, you've practiced that. That is perfect.
I was like, wait a minute, I don't know what I'm saying. But no, I mean, that's actually
Good.
about the book, but it was pretty spur of the moment.
It was perfect. It was perfect. I think when I was reading it, I was struck by there seemed to be like two parallel things that were happening for me, and I imagine readers. On the outside, you have this, is adventure the right word? Like it's hard circumstances that turn into good, that turn into other things. And there is adventure where she's doing new things and she's going new places and she's learning how to survive essentially in these new places that she finds herself in. And so there is this element of adventure and travel and friendship and in some cases, but then there's also this inner track, right, where she's figuring out who she is and who does she want to be and what does she stand for and how does she find her way. And together you've got that outside adventure and that inner transformation, figuring it out. It came together so beautifully, as you both know, because you wrote it. But I was so struck as a reader that there is both. And readers might come for the adventure and stick around for the identity work and the changes, or the other way around. But there truly is something for every reader, no matter why they picked up the book. And I'd love for you two to talk about that really big thing. I just mentioned a lot of things about the book. But I do love as a reader when you have both. And as a teacher of someone who would hand books to kids, you know, I can see so many entry points for so many readers in this.
That's like such a huge compliment right there. I mean,
Yes, thank you
yeah,
so much.
You're welcome.
yeah. I mean, to see, I mean, and I'm going to give the nod to Courtney here in seeing the importance of those different tracks, seeing and guiding the book to fulfill those goals. I mean, that's Courtney. That's
No, that's not it. That is
it's.
it.
I'll fight you on that one. I'll fight you. She's just so masterful and just understands the headspace of that age and that time period, and that evolution, exterior and interior. And in some ways it's at a different level, kind of from a maturation standpoint. But the women in my adult books go through that too. Who am I? What do I stand for? What am I called to do? Am I brave enough? Am I capable of overcoming these hurdles that are, in Lainey's case, huge. I mean, she's like the deck is completely stacked against her in every way possible. And the women in my books also have the deck stacked. They're not orphans, but the society doesn't want them to succeed. I read about women, whether they're scientists or politicians or artists or librarians. I mean, they run the gamut, but in every case, society is not giving them, the red carpet treatment to come out and do what they're really built to do. And in some ways, that's very parallel to what's going on with Lainey and where that interior and exterior journey really takes her, which is a lot of places that you wouldn't think, a girl of her means, her background, her experiences would go. And of course, that journey does intersect with Maleva Marish Einstein, and that's the other Einstein kind of piece of it. And there's a lot of parallels between Maleva and Lainey and what they've had to go through. And again, Maleva didn't grow up in an orphanage or anything like that, but she had a lot of hurdles and barriers. And as women in science at that time period, wow, I mean, the odds are really, really stacked against you. So, but Courtney's vision for that and deep understanding, that's what you're seeing.
Well, I think, when you're writing about a 12-year-old and in any circumstances, whether it is somebody like Lainey or you're just writing about the 12-year-olds in the Babysitters Club, which was my favorite thing to read when I was young, it is that age when you are figuring yourself out. So whatever adventure or non-adventure you're putting your characters on, that inner journey is going to necessarily be part of your work if you're doing your job right. Because I mean, I don't think anyone's straightforward. I'm 47. I don't feel like I'm totally figured out and a straightforward person, but particularly when you are in middle school, you are not fully figured out. And you are trying to figure out your friendships. And I can say now, as an adult, like, I want to be friends with people who value me for me and who I have a purely good time with and who I can trust with all these things. But when I was 12, I wanted to be friends with the quote unquote right people. And I didn't understand what that meant, what the word right meant when it came to friendship. So Lainey may have more dire circumstances, but she is very, very much still a young preteen girl who's going to be grappling with those same things. Mm-hmm. And then her journey and who she met along the way was really, what Marie's, what the other Einstein brought to the table. And when we were trying to figure out how to write a book for middle grade readers that brought into play Maleva Einstein's story, like that's where the intersection was, here is this young girl's story. And also there's going to be this grown-up character in this book that we do really very much want to be part of this story. So there was that's how you get like the adventure coupled with the inner adventure.
I was smiling as you were talking because yesterday was my 47th birthday.
Happy
And
birthday.
Happy birthday.
thank you. This morning in my morning pages, I'm a morning journaler every morning. And I actually wrote I turned 47 yesterday. Aren't I supposed to have this all figured out? And to hear you talk about that, yeah, we're just
Yeah.
always becoming, right? We're
Well,
always.
yeah, I mean, I turned 47 about 10 months ago, and it's so, I'm way ahead of you on that. And I'm so
And I'm way
unfigured
ahead of
out.
both of you, and I have no answers whatsoever. None.
Well, I do feel like I'm better at friendship. I guess like that. I have a lot that's not figured out at 47, but I think that I am more clear about who deserves to be in my life
Yeah.
and who doesn't, and who I need to work harder for and who I don't. And that was unclear to me when I was in 7th grade.
Yeah, and one of the quotes I love, I have a quote notebook. Listeners can't see it, but I'm holding it up to the two of you. And one of the quotes I loved, and I think is for any reader, but was speaking directly to my heart as I was reading it, was this one. You must never let your external circumstances determine your inner self-worth. Like we just need to meditate on that one for all readers. And that's why I thought the two external, internal, the outer kind of adventure they were on, the inner journey, it just all felt like it came together in that one quote, right? Lots of things will happen to us. Lots of things may be stacked against us, like Lainey, but that doesn't determine who we are or how we think of ourselves on the inside. And while Lainey did have an idea of what she hoped would happen on that adventure, and I can't, this is when it's so hard to talk about it because I don't want to reveal what some of those adventures were. As you mentioned, there were starts and stops and twists and turns in Lainey's journey. And what I loved is that even though what Lainey had hoped for didn't happen at first, she was needed in a different way that came out in the end. And listeners, I know that sounds very cagey, and it is because I can't tell you what's going on. But that idea of not letting those outer circumstances define you and then seeing where they go, my gosh, the threads that I could just pull from that journey were just so lovely. But that quote, that's on a sticky note. It's on my wall that you can't see over there. It's in the notebook. I feel like it's just a beautiful life affirmation for all of us.
That is so
Thank
kind.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a couple more. One that I think is pretty connected to what we were talking about, which is sometimes being brave and being foolish looked the same. The idea of bravery and courage and all sorts of things. That was another one I loved, but I've got to say my favorite as a book lover was this one. Books were there for you no matter what. They were so much better than people that way.
Courtney.
Books were there. Books were there for her. People, yeah. So I feel like, this is a book for book lovers for sure. At the heart.
I mean, if like me, and I'm guessing you too, you were that voracious reader kid, you know that, like you read that and you feel that, right? Like that was a place that books are a place during these adventures, we'll call them, of this age group, right? Sometimes they don't feel very adventuresome, they sound terrible, but the books are the place that can inspire, that you can retreat to, you can find kinship, all the things that you can't always find out there are waiting for you right there. And that's certainly something I hope that readers find here.
They will. I know they will. So when you think about putting this book out into the world, readers' hands, whether that's young adult readers or adult readers like mine, especially if you get this book club idea off the ground that pairs them so beautifully together, what is your hope, from both of you? Your hope for the book, your hope for readers as they read?
You want to go?
I think my hope for this is different than anything I've written before, in that I would normally say to you, my hope is that it gets into people's hands, it gets into a lot of people's hands, and that they think it's time well spent. That is always my ambition as a writer, is let this sell a lot of copies and let the people who buy those copies think that was time well spent. But with this, because there is this historical fiction element, and the genesis of this book was wanting to get Maleva Einstein's story, at least a part of that story, into younger readers' hands and brains. My ambitions for it are different. That I want readers, whether they're kids, adults. My 88-year-old stepfather read this in one sitting last night, which is remarkable because he's a good reader, but he's not a one sitting kind of reader. So that was also, I was very moved by that. But I think the idea of, it's not just educating about Maleva's story, it's educating about the idea that a lot of people don't get their due. It's often women or girls. But I love the idea of this getting into readers' hands and giving readers just that a little bit of more critical thinking of, what is the story behind these things that I take for granted?
That's
I also love that he read that in one sitting. That is adorable. Oh my gosh. I have much the same desires for it. I think, as I write about these historical women, so often I think, gosh, I wish I'd known about these women sooner, younger. And I do hear a lot of readers say that, a lot of readers who, I very intentionally choose women's stories, historical women's stories that resonate to today, right? So I'm hoping people will see bits and pieces and threads of their own lives and are able to extrapolate and learn and enjoy it. Like Courtney said, I mean, you want it to be time well spent. It doesn't have to be an educational tome the entire time, right?
And we hope it's not, actually.
It's not. I mean, there's lots of fun things that happen, but at the same time, come away just with a little bit of a different perspective. Whether it's gratitude for what you do have compared to what they used to have, whether you're Lainey or Maleva, right? And how that compares to your own lives. But also I even see adult women say a lot, um, knowing that they could means that I can, right? Knowing that these women from the past were able to succeed and thrive and do all of these amazing things, of course, you never heard about, means that I can too. Sometimes you need to see it, to do it, to believe you can do it. And, I see that thread come through with my adult readers, and I love younger readers to feel that way here. Because Lainey's, I'm definitely, I want them to feel inspired by the historical women, but Maleva's not not even the only historical woman in this book. There's Ada Lovelace and who she is and her and the way in which all of these women, their contributions are reverberating into the present times, whether it's, in here, the historical present or our current present, and the way in which we're standing on the shoulders of all these women that came before, and that you're not alone. You're not surmounting these hurdles by yourself. There are people who've come before you, and you can learn from them and be inspired by them, and they did it and you can too. And, while certainly in the STEM fields, there's been a lot of progress for women and girls, it is by no means an equal playing field at all. And so girls and women are experiencing a lot of the same things, maybe not to the extent, but certainly experiencing it that Lainey and Maleva have experienced. And so just that extra, while they're enjoying their read, maybe some takeaways. And of course, I do love that idea of the companion reads. And I have had readers say, I ordered this for my daughter, my granddaughter. I'm going to read it with her. I'm going to talk to her about the other Einstein. Because of course, there's stuff in the other Einstein that isn't really appropriate for, that or interesting to this audience, probably.
yeah. I just
And
oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I just want to say, so also Marie and I are both mothers of sons, and I feel like one of the things, and we talked about that a lot, and in one of our early versions of a book that never came to be, it was Lainey and her best friend who happened to be a boy that were going on an adventure together, and they were time travelers. It was not the book that got written. But I will say, historical women are not the only historical people in this book, there's also some historical men. And one of the men in this book that does not get a lot of airtime at all, I think he gets a sentence or two, is Maleva's father. And he is a man who believed in the scientific abilities of his daughter in a time where nobody thought women should even get to go to school beyond, like, what was it, 5th grade, 8th grade. And as the mom of a son, I mean, clearly we don't live in that time anymore. But I do think that I hope what is taken away is not just look what these women can do, there are women there to support you, but also be the kind of person that believes in people despite what the world tells them.
I love that. I'm going to package that up, Courtney. I'm going to talk about that a lot, but I just love how you just said that.
Yeah. Yeah, that last line, I'm going to go into the transcript and rewrite that down to add it to the quote notebook. It's not from your book, but it's from you. So it's going in there. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
In my son's baby book, which had nothing to do with our book, but when he was born, he was a few months old when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And I wrote about it in his baby book, but I wrote about her husband. And I said, I hope you grow up to be the kind of man that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's husband was, because this was a person whose wife's, ability, who was a very smart, incredible, brilliant man, but who also allowed his wife's star to shine brighter. Be that kind of person in the world.
It's so beautiful.
It is.
I didn't even know you did that. I'm learning so much right now.
No.
I don't usually take out his baby book, but
Now, do I get to ask? I didn't ask if I should ask this, but we could always edit it out. Are there continued collaborations between this friendship? You could be cagey or you can be real, but
so there's
put it out there.
like the short, like there's actually, like, we actually have a couple of ideas. So like, yes, and also we also don't know what we can say about some
Right.
of those.
I mean,
Okay.
I
That's just good.
think we could say we're hopeful. See what you think of this, Courtney. I certainly see collaborations, but in terms of the Lovelace Academy, I'm hopeful this won't be the last time you see it. Fair?
I think that's fair. I would add, this definitely won't be the last time you see our names together on something.
Okay.
There.
That's what I was hoping for. I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So-
So, yeah. I wish we could.
Well, that's okay. Sometimes just, having that little carrot is all we need. And it's a perfect segue to ask where listeners can find you online so that they can keep up with you and know if this is coming. So I'd love to know where listeners can find you, whether that's a website, a social media handle, any place that you'd like to share.
Sure.
Courtney Sheinmel is my website, CourtneySheinmel.com, and @CourtneySheinmel is my Instagram handle, and I am there way more often than I should be. So, and you can email me through my website. I will always write back. You can DM me at Instagram. I will always write back, and I am embarrassingly on there a lot.
We don't want to check the settings of your phone to see how much screen time you have every day.
I actually have a block on mine because of said.
I just put a block on mine, but if you knew the amount of time I allow before you get to the block, I can't even tell you, because you would change your mind about me. It's so embarrassing.
I have a problem. I'm authormariebenedict.com for my website. I think it's author Marie Benedict for my Instagram, and Marie Benedict Facebook. Thank you for knowing my Instagram handle. I'm not as good as Courtney at replying to DMs, comments, or emails that you can send me, but I do try. I will eventually get there. It may be a couple weeks. It's not very soon. Because I am trying to block myself from access.
You could say one of us has healthier boundaries than the other one of us.
Oh, it's so bad. How can we get mad at our kids for being on devices when we can't even get off them ourselves? It's dreadful. And we have the excuse we have to do it for work. So,
Right.
but yes, and I am excited. I don't know when this is going to air, but you can either join us or celebrate the fact that we got to do it. Courtney and I are actually going to be together to launch our book on Pub
Yes.
Day. So excited. I live in Pittsburgh. Courtney's actually coming to me. We're going to do wonderful event at the Pittsburgh Arts and Lecture Series, which is a fabulous series, brings amazing authors to my hometown. And we're going to be together on Pub Day. So I'm super, super excited about that.
That is
And also, and that's awesome. And I will also be on my own unless Marie makes a surprise appearance, but I know that that's probably not going to happen. But I'll be on my own with two other authors in New York City on May 18th, talking about the Secrets of Lovelace Academy and two other middle grade books that are coming out around the same time. So we are doing a Pittsburgh launch, and then there will be a New York City celebration as well, and hopefully more things as we go.
Yeah.
well, wonderful. Happy book birthday and enjoy all the celebrations. And I'm just grateful you came on to chat and I could help be part of that launch. This was such a pleasure to get all of the backstory behind the book. Thank you.
It's been a joy. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
oh, you're most welcome. And listeners, of course, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.